Okay, good morning this wonderful morning outside to the Fife Property Show. Today we're going to be talking about brown but not out. Keeping your garden lush for viewings in the hot summer. And we're coming into autumn. Autumn campaign has started already, isn't it? Our parks and our gardens are baked to a crisp. Luscious green lawns are starting to feel like a distant memory. But that can be challenging when selling your home, given that the gardens are deal breakers for more home buyers than ever because it's used as a usable outside space. And another, more or less, could we call it a reception room? Possibly.
I definitely would.
Yeah. As well as stopping people in their tracks while scrolling through online listings, your garden can be the deciding factor in turning a viewing into an actual sale. Often, I've actually got people out to the back garden, sitting in the summer sun, and their mood has completely changed. Have you guys noticed that?
Totally have, Jim. And you can see, I apologise, guys, for behind my screen, but the sun is beating in my window on this beautiful morning. I can't do anything about it. But yeah, I noticed that actually even with viewings, but also with listings, Jim. I was out at a client the other day and we actually did the meeting in the garden. It was fantastic. And it was just such a more relaxed atmosphere. It just brings something extra to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, good morning. Good morning, Andrea. For anybody out there, if you've got any questions, comments, or hit that like button, even give us some social reach for other people. Share this, tag other people in that are looking to sell or buy as well, because this is a masterclass in how to buy and sell a property and how to make your property look as right as possible for the right season. And I mean that. There's no point in having summer photographs in winter, because it just looks daft. It doesn't look normal if that's the case. And then people realise that. And while it gives your property attention, it just looks out of place to everything else. And it doesn't then match what people see when they come round. And that, my friends, is called a property misdescription, which is actually technically against the law. Traditional gardens are beginning to struggle with climate change. To keep them green, healthy and resilient through hotter summers and soggy winters, professional gardeners are digging around for alternative planting ideas and sustainable new techniques. Regardless of hosepipe bans, conserving water is a responsible practice. That can also cut your bills as well. But how can you stop your garden from withering in the heat without deserting your eco-friendly principles? Well, you're in the right place. From watering wisdom to drought-resilient planting and clever designing, this week's show is all about the scorching hot tips to wow your viewers into the hardy summer oasis. So let's kick off. Getting wise with watering. I know we've put this as the title, Perry, but what's your thoughts on this?
I think it is. It's not just for your plants, it's also for your wildlife as well, Jim. I mean, there's more to watering plants than drenching the leaves or leaving your watering cans and hose pipes, which nobody wants to do because obviously we want to try and conserve water a bit when it's like this. But the fact is that the last thing you should be doing is, if you want your garden to beat the heat, is drowning it, because actually that doesn't help it either. Yeah. You've got to get that right balance, haven't you? And what I actually do is I leave my empty watering can out, and then if we do happen to get rain and things through the night, it kind of part fills, and it's just a little extra bit just to run around before it gets too warm. So by being clever, there are ways that you can use your water. That's one of the things I do. But you can save time and effort as well while you're doing it, and you're helping your garden and your plants and everything look lovely, lush and green. I've got some geraniums at the moment, and actually they look fantastic. But with this rain that we've had recently, some of the flowers have all wilted. But I purposefully haven't watered them. I've just gone around and deadheaded everything so that actually then they'll become flush again. But I think you really need to check the soil that your plants are growing in as well, because they can get a bit kind of too droughty. And water, if you water them and let them get too dry, it just all runs out and then nothing's going to grow. But you check it that it is moist. If the soil is moist, then don't water it, because actually you're just going to give it too much and then your garden will get spoiled a little bit. But your plants, they may not even need watering all of the time. Just because it's hot outside doesn't mean to say you have to go around every day watering them, because actually you can do more harm than good. They need to be a bit dry as well, because that helps all your roots. It makes it lovely and more flourishing. Targeting your roots is a good thing. You can water from down upwards. So again, you can get these little plate things that you can put under your pots, and you put the water in the plate rather than the top of the pot. Because actually, if it's too dry, it just runs all the way through.
You see that time and time again, don't you, when you go over to places like Spain? You see the actual cone that goes into the ground, and they actually water the plant from the irrigation, the cone point, and they don't actually put it on the top. They just put it straight directly into the root. Because often under the ground, it's more moist under there, so the plant's fine. Often, as you see as well, I noticed the recent comment when we've got these flash thunder and lightnings. There was people commenting on the fact that the ground was too hard on the top, that it never gave enough time for the actual water to actually soak into the soil, because it was baked more or less, and literally just all the water just ran off and straight into the gutters and into the drains.
It's exactly what happened, and actually it happened with some of my pots, Jim, because I went out the next day and my pots were full of water at the top. But when I I tipped the pots to get the water out, because I thought, oh gosh, everything's going to die, there's too much water in there. Tipped the water out, but actually within a day they were bone dry again. So the water hadn't permeated all the way down to the root; it had just sat because everything was dry.
Did you not notice in the news that it was almost like we'd never seen thunder and lightning before?
It was bad though, I tell you. See, when that big clap happened about 2 a.m, honestly, I jumped up out of my bed. I thought the whole house was collapsing. It was so loud. But then other people I spoke to didn't even hear it. They were sound asleep.
If you go out to Spain, it's like that more or less all the time. You just get intense heat for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, fork lightning, crash, thunder, and then it's all over within an afternoon, and then almost an hour later the place is bone dry again.
It's true. And it's actually not something we see often, is it? But it's that. I remember it when I was younger, but I saw it recently when that happened. In the paths, it was like when the steam starts coming off the paths because it got so warm after the rain thunder. It's lovely. It's quite nice.
You'll have experienced that when playing golf, Jimmy, in these hot countries, and the fact that, the rain would come on and you go, aye, okay then. And normally here, everybody would run for waterproofs, but more or less when you're out there, it's like, it'll dry out within half an hour.
Yeah, a lot of people, the storm that we had, that was the loudest I heard in the UK in my time, but the only time I can recall anything like that was in South Africa, but that was in the summer. Their summer, that was around about March time I was there, but that was common. It was like, it's going to be an hour, then you just back out on the golf course. They're like, this will be an hour, and it was like they knew exactly when it was going to start and finish. But playing golf, I'm not someone that takes the waterproofs on and off. People get all into that. I'm just like, right, I'll just get my rain glove on and let's just crack on, get on with it.
I mean, when it comes to the golf courses, you can see that as well when you're out in the hotter countries. They will water first thing in the morning, and they will leave it to the late evening, if not during the night. The automatic sprinklers come on to water the course during the night as well. So the soil is cooler at that time, and it's more absorbent through that process. I suppose it's staying on top of the weeds as well. I mean, the weeds actually take a lot of water from the plants, don't they?
They really do. And actually, it's amazing where they come from, because even in my pots, I've had to go around, because in the top of the pots, there's some weeds growing, and you think, how did they get there even? Because that's, it's not like they're in the ground, but you do need to pick them out, because it does make a difference. And actually try to pick them out when it's a dry day, because they come out really easy.
I never even thought about it until now. You know what an analogy I could use? It's almost like you're eating your food, and then all of a sudden 5 other people turn up and actually start eating your food as well. And it's like, how far do you think you're going to get? You're going to starve. So that actually puts it into perspective, in the fact that what weeds actually do. I mean, weeds effectively are plants, aren't they? But we classify them as weeds, and there is an argument for what we call rewilding, or maybe that's just an excuse for the council not to do any work. Because that's the reason they've given all the time for parks around Fife. I heard that word getting used for St. Monans for the park out there. It's like, oh, we're intending to have it rewilding. It's like, all right, okay. In other words, you're just going to neglect and leave it then.
It's good for the bees and butterflies, is what they keep telling us.
Yeah. I mean, if your schedule doesn't allow you for the daily watering activities, look at the drip irrigation systems. By directing your water straight to the root zone, they're one of the most efficient gardening hacks for conserving water. Probably another one as well is what my father used to do. Is he used to just put old big massive 10-gallon drums at the bottom of the rainwater and the drain pipes, and he just used to on his garage and stuff like that, or his shed. He would just put one at the back of there, and then he would just bucket that water out and put it on the plants every single time.
My dad did the same. Yeah, he used to just dunk the watering can into the bucket.
Yeah. So it's a more. There is effective methods to actually conserve water and actually keep water. It's just that I genuinely think there's a lot of times we've actually just forgotten all these hacks and tips. And often you'll see them appearing back on things like TikTok and that, and folk will go, "That's absolutely fantastic." And you think, God, you used to do that 30, 40 years ago. And everybody thinks like it's the second coming, it's a revelation and knowledge, and it's like, I would never have thought of that. It's like, well, it's just old things that people used to do. You see that a lot of that coming over now. What about, as well as watering your plants, taking care of the soil? Is that essential?
I would say,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I would agree, Perry. I would say by covering the earth with mulch, you insulate the ground against summer heat and winter frost, so protecting the roots and from drying out or freezing as well. So even when you go into winter.
Well, you see that, Jimmy, that's quite a good one, because you actually see that, and I think it's Peter Perry is actually doing that outside, and he's snooping out. He's got all the carrots.
Yeah.
So what they do is they cover all the carrots, they cut off the tops, and then they cover all the carrots in the fields, and they just leave them in the ground, but they cover it all with straw and everything on top to actually protect it from any elements, like for extreme heat or extreme cold. And then when they're ready to actually harvest, then they just take the cover off, or the mulch or whatever it is, and then they just take up off the ground and they start wheeling along the tractors along to the distribution centres. So I've just seen that recently, and I thought it was probably only a couple of years ago I actually realised that that's what they were doing, because I always used to wonder how they were able to keep, how would you be able to come up with that? Where would you get your carrots in winter? Because they wouldn't grow in the ground, and that's effectively what they're doing. They grow them during the summer, and then just cover them up, and then just keep them in the ground until they're ready, and then take them out. Great idea.
You're seeing I'm seeing a lot of tractors and stuff, and they've all got their stuff on the back ready to go. And
yeah. So what exactly is mulch, Jimmy? And how do you use it effectively?
Well, mulch comes in many different
guises.
Guises, including gravel, bark, compost, grass clippings, leaves, and as you said, straw.
Yeah, so that is effectively what they're doing.
Yeah, and what they know, from what I know, they normally spread it a thick layer of about 2 inches deep over wet soil. So it's key to do it at the right time, otherwise it's not going to be effective.
Yeah.
And they water directly onto the mulch at the base of the plants to go straight to the roots. So again, as you say, what they do in Spain, straight into the roots to make sure it's effective. And what they do is they reapply your mulch layer by layer every sort of 6 months, ideally in the spring and autumn.
One of the things that I saw, I know you've given some examples there, and I'd never heard of this, and it was a Fife farmer, and I wish for the life of me I could remember which farm it was, but I just can't, it's slipped my memory. But in the spring, he had it all over social media, and what he was doing, and apparently it's something from, again, like you were saying, Jim, bygone days that farmers used to do. But actually, when they come to shearing the sheep, they were actually using the sheep fur and using that for mulch. And he said it's such a great way to do it because it keeps the water in. Obviously, the sheep do because they're out in the rain and whatnot, but apparently it really soaks it in and holds it well. So he was like putting it all in the plant pots and was kind of helping. And he actually put a big advert up to say if anybody local was wanting any, just to go along and get it, which was brilliant.
That's because effectively they were going on about the fact that sheep, the wool wasn't really worth anything.
No, it was priceless.
It obviously made sense at that time to actually use it for repurpose for other things other than that, because there was no really a huge demand for them at that point in time, especially when you get things like extreme summers where it's really, really hot, and who's wanting to go and buy cotton and wool and all the rest of it to have warm clothes. That'd probably be the last thing you do. I mean, is mulch extremely practical, Penny?
I think it is really practical actually, because it does reduce how often you have to water your plants. So again, if you're like busy people, I know myself, sometimes I've struggled to care for my garden as much as I'm loving putting it together. But actually, you know, sometimes you can't manage it in the morning because you've got your rush for getting to work or what have you. And then by the time you get home in the evening, sometimes you're just too exhausted to do it, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you can't forget. And then it's a shame because then your garden starts to wilt and then all that original effort kind of disappears. But it does save you time. I think your plants don't need as much water then. So again, if it's raining and the water's getting in there, you're reserving the water. But it also can be quite beautiful and elevate the look of your garden, some of it. You can put lots of dash of colour through it. You know, that thing we were talking about with the sheep fur. I mean, you could put little strains through it where you glitter or stones or brightness, and it just makes it really nice.
Yep.
And you can do kind of some lovely natural designs. So not only is it making your garden look nice, it's providing a really practical service in regards to keeping your garden green and flourishing, and also saving you a wee bit of time. So you can actually maybe just sit in the garden, have a wee glass of wine, not have to worry about watering it.
Yeah, the classic example is the bark chips. There's a lot of people put it on to stop the weeds, don't they? And it's quite effective, and it's quite decorative as well. So it can really make your garden pop, especially when it comes to a time at this time of year when we're going into autumn, where the golden brown leaves and everything's right. You know, it's just right. It's just at that point where everything just looks great, before it all disappears within 2 weeks.
I don't.
Oh, I used to have a standing joke. It was like, you know, I used to go on holiday. We used to go exactly in August. So August was the classic example, the 2 weeks in August, just at the start of August. And it was primarily because it was the school holidays. But you always used to find, just as you were leaving, you almost like one leaf fell off the tree, and then by the time you came back, it was completely bare.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing how it can change in just a few weeks. Actually, funnily enough, Billy and I were talking about it last night, how you can start to see that darkness starting to come in the evenings now, can't you? And we've got a lovely big tree. It's actually in the houses opposite us. But this week I've noticed, I don't know if it's because of the hard rain that we had, but certainly there's a lot more leaves falling. But I don't think it's because autumn's have come any quicker. I think as well, as part of, again, the heat, isn't it? We talk about the scorching and whatnot. I think a lot of the trees have been so dry for so long that actually the leaves are coming off because they haven't got water in it. That's the problem.
Yeah. So, but when you think about the logic, I mean, you know, this is probably when we're going into this time of year. Is it the fact that viewings will get? Well, what will happen about viewings? Because it's obviously getting darker at night. What do we do about that, Jimmy?
Well, it's just managing people's expectations on the viewing. A lot of people work, so they can't view out of hours, but
yeah,
the amount of times that people I have taken out of hours to do viewings, their normal comment is, I need to come back and see it in the light. So it's just managing people's expectations and the light. Sometimes we'll have to do weekends, but it's just trying to make it fit for everybody. If people have a young family, sometimes they can't do out of hours because they're putting the little ones to bed, so it's not practical.
So personally, the way I see it is because your activity doesn't really disappear; it just slows down because you're now going from viewings from day to day to probably weekend to weekend as you get into the darker nights. And that's effectively what's happening right now. And it's what you say, Jimmy. It's like, you know, people are coming round and they're saying, well, I'm going to have to come back during the day now because the garden's, you know, it's dark. I really can't see it. So my advice to anyone doing viewings is take people round outside first, then go inside at this time of year, because by the time you get outside and all the questions are asked, and you might have a lot more questions than you expect from your potential buyer, then you might end up finding it's you know, dark, and therefore the person can't really tell where the sun's going to go down or where the sun's going to hit. So if you take them right round straight away and say, look, you know, when they come to the front door, it's easy enough to say, look, you know, probably just advise them at this point in time. It's like, you know, by the time we're finished this, it'll probably be dusk. It'll maybe be a wee bit darker. Maybe we'll not be able to see enough. So do we want to do the outside first, and we'll just cover the garden and the back garden as well, and then we'll go inside and have a look at the inside. And that's an easy way to do that. Then you're at the front anyway, and then you take them around the side, and then you take them around the back. And then you go in the back door possibly. So maybe plan for that route if you're doing viewings during that period of time.
What you're saying, Jim, as well, if you time it right, you can actually maybe able to plan it where you start seeing exactly where the sun's setting, so you'll know exactly where you're going to be evening times of having the sun, so you know exactly if it's a house that you love where you can position, or you can already forward plan how you're going to set your garden up for that time of year once you potentially purchase your new home.
Jimmy. First thing I do now when I go out to see people's properties is I go out the back garden and I immediately look where is south.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, what time is it now? Is it 3 o'clock? Right, it's over there. So south is right there. That's almost south right there. So I know the sun's going to go up at 90 degrees from that this way to my left-hand side. And I know it's going to go 90 degrees down on the other left-hand side, on the right-hand side of that. So I'm able to tell where the sun goes up and comes down. So then I can look at the garden and say, okay, the sun comes up, you're going to get it on the front, on the closest to the house. You're going to get the sun all the day there, and then probably when it comes to late afternoon, you're going to have to gravitate towards the rear of the garden. And then I'll look about how the garden should be planned, if that's the case, and how I should talk about the garden when I'm walking through a video. And the fact that you can maybe put decking to the bottom, but it would maybe be advisable to put decking to the bottom corner because that's where the sun sets. Because we as Britons, and the Europeans know this, we tend to spend a lot of time towards the evening in our garden. We don't spend a lot of time in the morning, whereas the Spanish and Europeans apparently spend more time in the morning in their garden. And they do less time in the evening. So that's where you have to plan out where the sun's going to come up and where it's going to set, and see if there's any advantage actually in marketing the property to actually highlight these issues. And again, I go to talk about video. You can't replicate that kind of speech. You can't replicate that in writing because it's so distinct and it's so particular and it's so long. People will just switch off straight away. So therefore, you have to have video in order to market the property, in order to tell people that's what it is. I said it to someone the other day. This is actually going off the beaten track about. This is quite important to people out there thinking about selling their house. They see a beautiful video of their house and they see a lovely drone footage of their house. And their house looks absolutely fantastic, but there's no animation on the drone and there's no talk up on the video.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think anybody is going to buy the property is going to buy it? Because they don't know anything about your house at all. And in real terms, the video and the drone footage you've just seen does not tell anybody outside of your realm and your thinking what your property is and how it appeals to them.
Yeah.
All it does is make you feel good about your property because you know it. So you know all the answers to the questions that you're asking for this video, whereas the buyer looks at that video and looks at the drone footage, effectively what I call silent movies with music on them. And all they do is go, yeah, it looks good, but it doesn't really tell me much. It just looks like, okay, it looks what it is. I could have seen that in the photographs. Why did I need to pay for the drone footage? And why did I need to pay for that? Because it tells me nothing else other than that. Maybe drone footage could give the game away and say it's close to a golf course, it's close to, by assumption, it's close to the sea. But it doesn't actually tell you that because no one's telling you that. No one's saying that. No one's been emotive about that. And that's why talking pictures is what I do. And why animated video, drone footage, animated, showing people where it is in proximity to the airports, where it's in proximity to train stations, where it's in proximity to the beach, the harbour, the Fife coastal path. I'm almost going into our script here. Is in relation to where you're actually going to be staying. That's why people want to buy your property. Hey, we know it's got 3 bedrooms and it's a semi-detached property already because that's why we clicked on it. Tell us something different. Show us something more. Get us on the hook. That's what it's at.
But actually, it's true what you're saying though, Jim. And to go back, I know we've kind of gone off the beaten track here a little bit, but we're actually not. When you go back to when we were talking about autumn's coming and what do you do when the weather's changing and the viewings, that's why our video is so important as well, because actually some people have bought from us just from seeing the video. So even if they can't view at night time and they can't view on a weekend, they've got that video. It's as good as them being in there, other than the fact if they're in there, they might want to kind of dive a bit more into certain rooms, but they can see everything about it in all its glory at the right time of the day. Yeah. So if people are not on social media and don't have the YouTubes and all the channels that we're screening on, it's strongly advisable when the weather's changing for you to be able to do that, because that gives you all access, all areas really to the house, doesn't it?
It's also the things like when you're round, people often wonder why I look out every single window. And the reason I look out every single window is I want to see what anybody's going to see first thing in the morning. So, that's why I'll do it. So I want to see what they'll see first thing in the morning when they get up. And for some people, it might be, wow, the sun's going to be over there. And by the way, the sea is just over there, or it's going to be blue skies. Now, the assumption is you notice it most of the time. If you look at the sea, you usually see typically blue skies over the sea. But as soon as you look behind you on the inland, it's all of a sudden it's dark and cloudy. And it's weird, but it's true. There's more blue skies over the seas than there is inland all the time. I don't know what that is, if it's to do with the climate or the way the sea is and everything like that. Maybe the reflection as well from the sea. That's maybe what causes it. But you tend to find there's less cloud over the sea than there is inland, and it looks a lot brighter as well. And I think that's a lot to do with it. So if you've got something pointing towards the sea, it's something to highlight and take advantage of, especially when you're doing talk-up videos, aye. Okay, so let's get back to here then. Let's talk about repurposing your household water. As long as there's nothing too toxic in the water, I mean, like soap and detergent. This was actually quite interesting. Andrea said this. When I was little, we used to have a sign over our bathroom door saying, "Save the water, bath with a friend." And it's true. I do remember that every single time. And every single time it was like, right, who's in the bath next? And unfortunately, I was the poor relation and I had to swim in everybody's filth. And I remember it was like tide marks over the bath and everybody else because I was last in line.
That's what it used to be, wasn't it? I mean, gosh, Sunday night was bath night before school, wasn't it? Because you didn't have showers and everything like we do now.
Yeah, listen, I've got to say, everybody's talking about the energy crisis and the fact that they'll not be able to heat their homes. And I'm like, hold it. I mean, 50 years ago, we really didn't have central heating. We all sat round by a fire in the living room, and that was it. You went to your bed and you had blooming 20 quilts on your bed, and you kept your clothes on, and you just got up in the morning and all the windows were condensation on them, and it's like, and you were Baltic. I used to just get when I was wee, I just used to jump out of my bed and I was dressed already, ready to go. And then I even used to do my paper round. I used to put my clothes on top of my jammies because it was too cold to change. I just used to put them on top and just go outside and do my paper round.
It's true. I remember one night going in because I had a younger sister. She's 7 years younger than me, and I remember when we were younger. I might have been maybe 12 or 13, so she would have been like 6 or 7 at the time. And I remember she was going to bed earlier than I was. And I remember one time going into bed and thinking, gosh, she's been awful fidgety because the 3 girls all shared one room. And I remember thinking, gosh, she's been awful fidgety. She's actually upside down in her bed. And she wasn't. She was lying in her bed the proper way, but she had socks on her hands because she was freezing.
So we've walked in that. We've completely changed the subject, haven't we? So, as the bathwater thing, if you're not putting anything in your bathwater, can you reuse that? There's a possibility. You can imagine scooping all the bathwater out. Hey, might get to that at some point. So using grey water from washing is perfectly fine for plants, flowers and grass, and can mitigate the effects of the hosepipe bans and save water and reduce your bill as well. Now in Scotland, we obviously don't have that. In England, they do. They have metered water, and they're private water companies. But in Scotland, we just it gets added onto your council tax bill. That's effectively it. So there is ways to actually save water, and this is what we talked about recently in the beginning. We touched on this. Collect shower water within a well-placed washing up bowl or a bucket. Scoop out water from baths or water basins. Let washing machines and dishwashers drain into a bucket, provided there's no huge amounts of detergent in it. Remember, you know what? Because and provided you're not actually putting it onto something that you're going to eat, because then effectively you're just putting it into the plant, and then the plant soaks up all these toxics for want of a better phrase, and then you then go and eat them again, and then it goes into your body, and so that's no great thing. And buy a water butt to collect rainwater in the future. This is what I talked about, and store grey water now. They're exempt from hosepipe bans, and you can find designer alternatives to as to the standard plastic monsters that you have. We used to get the old the malt barrels, the big huge malt barrels, the blue ones from distillers. Distillers used to throw them out sometimes, or used to know somebody that worked in distillers, and you would be able to get a malt barrel, and then you just cut the top off it and you'd stick it at the back for the hose pipe, and it must have had about maybe 100 litres or something like that. There was something crazy it held, but it was perfect for rainwater at the back of your garage or the back of your shed. And easily you could do it with your house as well. I mean, everybody's got a downpipe at their house, so it's easy enough just to take the downpipe and redivert it into a bar of water if it comes to that. But a lot of people just don't actually think like that because we're not taught these things anymore. We're
not, and I think also it's a bit of a kind of instant kind of throwaway. Everything's a rush, so we just kind of go for that quick way of doing things nowadays, don't we?
We live in an instant microwave society. We want everything now. Everything's just a throwaway society, and I could get on my high horse and be an old person.
Not again. But one of the things that you've not mentioned there, Jim, about, and I know it's not a big thing, and it's not a bad as well, is if I've got fresh flowers in the house in a vase, and obviously you need to refresh that water sometimes. If I'm refreshing the water that's in there, I actually take it out in the garden and I'll pour it into one of my pots. Because the water's still water. It doesn't, what's the point in throwing it away? I put it into the pots and it'll water like 2 or 3 little plants.
But one used to actually say that it's something it's never taught in school. It's because it's just looked as a normal thing now, and it's almost expected that you're just going to turn a tap on and water's going to come out anytime you want. You go to a third world, no chance. That's a luxury. And it's a luxury maybe the whole village has got for one point in the whole place from a well, which possibly isn't even treated properly. So we've actually become so accustomed to that, it's almost just like a normal thing. And it is a day-to-day thing for us. So we just switch on the water and we get hot and cold water anytime we want. So, it's something we've just got to learn to live with as we move on and more things happen in terms of climate change and in terms of hosepipe bans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you want to get really radical, as I said before, take a look at TikTok, a TikTok video by the 4050, where a husband and wife team have siphoned 150 litres of used bathwater with a hose pipe and highly effectively, but it's not for the squeamish. Remember, but TikTok is good for something. It does give you a lot of good ideas. Some people actually use it as a really good and effective medium to actually spread a message alongside that sort of Instagram as well. So it's the same sort of thing. TikTok and Instagram kind of go hand in hand. Kind of think TikTok's winning though. Instagram seems to be the poor relation now. And loads and loads of tips on there to actually repurpose your household water.
There is a lot of tips, and there's lots of ways you can do it. I don't know if I want to be doing the bathwater thing though. How on earth? I mean, the logistics of trying to siphon off your bathwater and like you used to do with the petrol. No, I'm not. That might come, Jim, if these figures keep going up.
So planting for the hotter weather. What could we do with that then?
Well, if your garden or your balcony is wilted with the heat, you're never going to really get good blossoms. You need to be careful. So there's several ways that you can kind of overcome that. And it is about, looking at rival and sustainable ways of doing things and recognising actually what will grow in your garden and what won't. Sorry, that's Billy, just take the dog out. To recognise what will grow and what won't. So it's about picking those right things. Otherwise, you could just be throwing money away, couldn't you? So many drought-tolerant plants work. And funnily enough, actually, I've got 2 additions to my garden that I didn't expect. And I think it is because that garden has been in the sun quite a bit this year. But when we moved in, there was like 2 trunks. They'd obviously chopped something down. I had no idea what it was. They were maybe sticking about that much out the ground. And now they're about this big. And I've got literally 2 beautiful palm trees starting to grow.
I was going to say that because I remember when I sold next door, there was a couple of palm trees out the back garden.
Yeah, so they'd always cut them down and now they're growing again and they just look beautiful. So I've made a feature of them. They've created something in my garden. I've put pebbles around about them so that they really pop out of the ground. But I don't need to do anything with them. And so it's, they're just looking after themselves, to be honest with you. So it's about just being smart with what you plant as well. I think that makes a big difference. And UK gardens, we're not used to, are we? You go to kind of tropical places and the gardens are always lovely and it's always green and lush things. It's not always flowering that you see, but British gardens tend to be flowering, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, I have a huge overgrown garden and it's like a mountain to climb every time you look at that back window. You think to yourself, jeez, It's like we just cut the hedge last week. Jimmy, what's your garden like just now?
It's all right. It's all right. It's a lot better than when we first moved here. Some roots in between the slabs, our seating area, which aren't great. And on our stone, we've got half lawned to the side and half stone chipped, and there's some weeds and roots just coming up at the stone chipped areas where the trampoline is, which I need to de-weed. But it's not too bad actually. I'm quite happy with it. I must say, I'm not too bad at cutting the grass and keeping on top of them.
Sort of low maintenance.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it.
It's the easy gig, isn't it? Just to go straight for the stone chips.
Yeah. Some people probably won't want to hear this, but I would love to. Well, I would like to astroturf the grass area because the kids can still play on it, but it's not very environmental friendly for the wildlife and stuff like that. But the grass is good. It's just you'll know it's quite a big back garden that I've got. But
and then you'll have to hoover the lawn now and again if you astroturf it.
Yeah, and if you have. What I didn't think about, what someone was telling me, is, you astroturf it, but then if you get pets and they do their business on there, then you're gonna have to wash it as well. And I was like, right, I'll just grass, I think.
Sometimes it can be more work actually than just getting the lawnmower out, Jimmy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing more. I don't know about you, but when you smell freshly cut grass.
Yeah, that's what I do.
When the sun's out and you just get that wet, freshly cut grass smell. And it just hits you. It just takes you right back to. For me, it takes me right back to school sports days. And I've got a funny feeling it's because the people at the council ran out to the park and went, "Oh my God, we better get the grass cut to the school sports day today." And that's effectively what they did. It's like, we better get this cut. It's the school sports day of the day. And that was because it was always when we were walking up to the King George V Park. It's like, I smell cut grass every single time. So it must have just been that every single time we had the school sports day, they ran out and cut the grass.
But the amount of times I've gone to see properties, valued them, they come into the market the next week, and you turn up in the back garden, and they've cut the grass and spent an hour weeding the slabbed area. How it transforms a property from the outlook is unbelievable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So back to this, Perry, when you were talking about things like, plants for hotter weather, what other tips have you got?
So the kind of plants you're looking at, and I've got them in my garden, they're gorgeous. So geraniums are a big thing, and they last, and they don't need a lot of looking after, and you just get really good pops of colour. Blue Eringo is really lovely as well. And actually, I must thank Carol, who I met last week, because she dropped some Blue Eringo off to me, which was really nice of her. And those sort of things just kind of grow and they don't take much looking after. So again, you're not having to water them a great deal. So that's grand. But if you're planting in summer, buy established plants, I think, is a good thing as well. That have already had the chance to grow and develop their roots, because then they're going to really take quite easily in the garden as well. So that's always a good thing. Trees and climbers and shrubs that kind of weather for kind of every season are always a good thing as well, because again, they don't need looking after too much. But actually, you'll maybe get some pops of colour from them in summer, but then in the autumn and winter, you're getting the lovely greens from them as well, and all the different colours of green and oranges and browns that will come along, and then they'll repeat year after year. So evergreens are a good thing for that as well. And some perennials. Probably just more put a trellis or a pergola out, rather than actually let it creep right up the side of your house. Yes. Because a lot of people actually just forget about it completely, and the next minute when they go to see their house, it's like the whole thing's covered in ivy. It looks really nice and photogenic, but it does cause immense problems later on, because it can actually affect your harling, and it could end up becoming boss, and it can actually keep water in it as well, and moisture, and actually soak in through your walls. There is, and it's difficult to actually come off sometimes. So you often just have to cut the bottom of the roots. And then just let it wither, and then take it off from there. But it can leave quite a lot of damage if you're not doing it right. So just be careful that doesn't get out of your hand, and you keep it managed, don't you? Yeah, not just on the walls though, Jim, but even on your fences and your sheds. 2 sheds that were in this property when we moved in, they had ivy on the roofs, and I've tried to take it off, and it literally is so embedded now, it's just ripping the roof off the shed. So we've just had to leave it and keep cutting it back and leaving it just now until we put a new shed up, because otherwise it's not going to be watertight. So you might think it looks nice, but there's impracticalities as well if you're not careful about how you do it.
And you dig through the ivy and you find a bike or a car. What? There's a bike here.
That's true. But if you're up for a whole, getting back to it though, if you're up for a whole new look for your outside space, the Royal Horticultural Society, they have some great stuff and ideas. So again, go online and have a look at that, what they do. So they've got some great ideas and advice on drought-resistant gardening and the best way to go around that. I remember when we were younger, we used to watch Beech Grove Gardens on the telly because my mum and dad used to like watching it to understand what they did in their garden every season. But they do come up with some good tips, these types of places, and we're online now. You can get access to all that type of information on how best to do it for yourself, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put a link on the Royal Horticultural Society, if I could say that right, put my teeth in.
I know, it's a bit of a tongue twister,
Comments
isn't
below. I could do that right now. So there it is coming along. So that's the Royal Horticultural. All right, okay, that one. I'm not going to even attempt to say it again, embarrass myself. It's like it's www.rhs.org.uk, and that'll get you the main website. And then if you want to do Scotland /Scotland, but it's in the comments anyway, so feel free to actually click on there, and you get a lot of good tips from that organisation. Jimmy, what's the next step? The final ones, diverting attention from your lawn. What's all that about?
Yeah, I think Perry's done that in her garden from what I can see and what she's been telling me is in the office. But lawns have an unquenchable thirst in the scorching summers, and it's not realistic to keep them as green as Centre Court at Wimbledon, especially with the stripes that they get. I always try and do that in my garden, get the stripes, but they're always a bit wavy.
I tell you what, I've had it a couple of times, and there's something weird about it. It makes you feel a real sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, because
and it's that mindset that that advertising and marketing has actually conditioned everybody to think that if you've got stripes in your lawn's perfect.
Yeah,
am I right or am I right?
We had Charlotte's mum and dad go on holiday to France every year for about 4 weeks, and you have to go around there and help them, say, grow veg and cut the grass and stuff. But I'm not allowed to cut the grass because Charlotte has to do a certain way that her dad does, go around the borders and then make sure to get in the stripes. So it's definitely like that. But
so Andrea says no one will look at your lawn if you have a cute dog or a cat. Forget the lawn. Look, the cat.
Yeah, that's
the cat. There you go. How to detract people from an area you don't want them to really know about when you're doing viewings. Send your dog or cat out at the same time. People will focus on that, and they'll not even see what's going on round about them.
That's obviously your tactic then, Jim, because you've got cats, you've got chickens, you've got a tortoise, you've got everything going on. Badgers,
foxes, even hedgehogs.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see. Send the troops in, divert attention.
But people don't need to fear when the scorching heats, because healthy lawns can manage for 3 to 4 weeks without water. And grass usually turns green again when it rains. I'm sure everybody's experienced that with the heat and then the thunderstorm, as we discussed, and lawns are coming back to bloom again. So
unless you paint it like they did for the Open. You remember that? You remember that when the Open was on one year and it was so hot that everything had gone brown, especially the top rims of the bunkers. So they went round with actual artificial paint and they put it onto the grass to make it all look green for the cameras.
Yeah, and I know a couple of times when it's brown, they have to put lines around the green so you know whether you're on the green and can mark your ball or not, especially when it goes, well, basically it's dead because it's so brown and they're trying to make it really firm and tricky. But people shouldn't, rather than fight against it, just go with the flow and divert attention, as we say, elsewhere with colour, basically.
Yeah, okay. So planting summer blooms that are already flowering in beds and containers, maybe that's a good idea. It's like what you said, Perry, about nipping down to the local garden centre and getting pre-organised or pre-made, more or less, blooms there and just sit them right there. No need to cause a fuss, just take them and put them down.
Definitely, and it's a real easy way to do it. But for everyone out there, if you've not seen the video that I did as well, though, remember Dave down by the Heritage Railway, go down and see him because you'll get some great deals down there, and he does some really lovely plants. So, and it goes to the Leaving Food Bank, so you're helping two things. So sorry, I just diverted there a little bit, but he's really great for giving plants. But yeah, it's true, and it's about just doing that in an economical way. What I'm looking forward to next year, because I'm more settled in this house, is actually I'm going to start doing everything myself from seed, and I'm going to grow my own. So actually, I'm not going to need to spend a fortune going to the garden centres. I can grow multiples here that'll fill my garden for about a quarter of the price. So there's little ways there as well where you can put maybe that little bit of effort in the kind of early spring to make your summer fantastic.
So jazzing up your, you know, that's probably one that you'll do, jazzing up your furniture, you know that. Perry, you light up straight away. Jazzing up your furniture, vibrant cushions, garden rugs, throws, use paint to add a colourful cheer, a cheerful summer vibe to a plain wall. That's actually really quite a good one. You see usually the wall, and then somebody maybe whitewashes it, or they maybe do a nice light blue, especially in the East Neuk. Or near seaside places, a nice light blue, and then you put things like, well, you've seen it when you go along the coastal path along at Lower Largo. You've got things like old Lifebuoy rings, and then you've got maybe ships, or you've got ceramic tiles on there as well, and it just looks really nice. It makes you have that feel, and then you put a pebble dash in the bottom corner, just small pebbles and that, just a brown colour, and then you've got a wee rockery over to the side. It's like I've got a garden in my mind, an imagination of what it would be like. But I've seen it many times, that it's almost like a blueprint, a formula for success when you're doing your garden.
Yeah. It really is. And what I love as well, when you go kind of Lower Largo onwards along the East Neuk, you see a lot of people using the old creels as well, the fishermen's creels in their gardens. Yeah. There's no rope and everything. And I don't know, there's just something that's really great about it. And you're hearing the sea behind you, and you're part of the whole experience, isn't it? It's all your senses start kicking into how beautiful it all is.
Yeah, and it's when you're out for things like a walk along the beach. So if you're out for a walk along the beach and you've got driftwood, just a wee, no, I'm not talking about a big tree trunk. I'm just talking about bits of driftwood, just bits of driftwood, a bit of seashell now and again, and it just looks really nice and decorative round about your garden. Another one as well, I actually see in East Neuk quite a lot, as you go to some of the certain areas going along the coastal path from, I think, St Monans to Pittenweem on to Anstruther. You can see there's a lot of coves, and they've got a lot of broken up shell. Yeah, you've got loads of broken up shell. And by the way, if you've got hens, that is good as grits for your hen's digestion. So that broken up shell, the wee minute shell, they actually you put it in the feed. So you've got normal pellets for your hens, and you actually put that in the feed, some of it, just a wee drop, and it actually aids your hen's digestion. It also gives them calcium as well, which is good for the hardening of their shells when they lay their eggs. Oh. So there's lots of lying about, and yet you've got to go and pay for it in the pet shop, and it's like it's all over the beach. It's like, why would you just pick it up for there? And it's because it's just minute amounts, just wee tiny bits of shell, and it's great for your hens. Your hens, it's really good for it aids their digestion, and it also helps their egg formation. Just a wee top tip today. You never thought you'd begin tips on rearing livestock, did you?
We're mindful
I'll be talking about cows next week.
Don't come on the show with rubber gloves on, whatever you do. But you're right though about the colour popping. You don't have to just do it all with plants. I've got the colourful cushions, the outdoor rugs. Funnily enough, I was just speaking to Billy about it this morning, because the last couple of days it's been quite wet, and I was saying maybe we should roll the rugs up and put them in the shed for the winter. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet, but they are good ways of doing it, and you get so many different patterns and colours as well. So again, just putting it on your deck or your patio. If you've not managed to even do your deck this year, it's a great way to kind of camouflage it as well as make it look nice.
You're right there. So Billy's skipped over autumn completely.
Yeah.
And now we're coming into winter. He's not even giving anybody a chance for the autumn.
No, we're done. We're done. Summer's over.
Summer's over. Pack everything up. That's it. We'll just sit in the house and brood.
That's it. Get the one burner on. But there are loads of good ways that you can colour things up, and you get, as you say, even if you have got old ornaments as well. I had my poor wee granny, when she passed about 7 years ago, she had 2 owls in her garden, stone owls, and they've been in her garden for decades. I remember as a kid, like really thinking they were fab. And I've now got them in my garden, but they were starting to look a bit jaded. And I just went to B&Q and I got some stone paint, and I like just repainted them and designed them and everything, and they're back in the garden now. And it's such a great personal thing, but they look fab and it's brought the colour. So it's when we talk about garden furniture, we spoke about this before, haven't we? Don't let it get all jaded and wilted looking your furniture and all dried and scratchy. Get a wee pot of paint, just fix it all up. It's amazing how it can improve your garden without actually spending a great deal of money, which everyone is very conscious of at the moment with what's been going on.
What do you do if you're not into these bright colours and a huge, like my place has to be like the Chelsea Flower Show? What if you're no into that sort of thing? What is there anything you can do?
Yeah, if you're not into that, that's fine. You can have just green and that be beautiful. Your plants can be your pots can be colourful. My decking, for instance, when we just redone it, I've painted it black, believe it or not. Why would you paint it black? But actually it looks great. And so you've just got a couple of pots on it, and that is given colour and contrast. So colour and contrast is not about being orange and yellow and pink and red. It can be greys and blacks and blues.
Just the neutrals, the things like the greys and the hay look and the wheatgrass look and stuff like that.
Exactly. And you can make it beautiful. Yeah,
okay. So it's more muted rather than actually more accentuated.
Yeah, I think not everyone wants it bright, and a lot of people do want to tone it down. It's not a problem, as you say. And a lot of Scandinavian countries, if you look at what they do, everything's kind of neutral when it's calm and it's lanterns and it's nice. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be about colour. Your lawn being beige is, can still be beautiful because you can do other things with it around it. If it's wilted. Many great things you can do.
But the key is probably with your garden, with it being another usable outdoor space, like people want it defined, is actually when you're doing viewings, make sure that it is actually possibly defined like that to the potential viewer that's coming round. So it's about you making sure you contact your agent when you're going to, if you're doing the viewings, by the way. If you're doing the viewings, it's making sure you contact your agent, find out about that person and find out about what they like and what floats their boat, and actually playing to that. So if they like the idea of spending most of their time out in the garden, then make sure your garden's, it's not going to take much. Make sure if you've got furniture lying about or something like that, don't use old furniture, by the way, old rickety broken down stuff. Just we'll have done other shows with that. So if you look back on the helpful guides that we're actually promoting in our YouTube list, you will find other shows like that, how to revitalize your furniture. We talk about that. And what to do it in a cost-effective way in order to make this look like a usable outdoor space, because that's effectively what your audience is going to be coming around to look for. If it's somebody that doesn't want to look, it doesn't really care about the garden and they're not really that into garden, then make sure your garden looks like it's low maintenance more than anything, so they realize it's not going to be a lot of hassle. So it's about finding out what's really in the mind of your potential buyer or potential viewer when they come round, and understanding how to play to their needs.
That's really important, actually. And we often, when we're registering people who are looking to purchase with us, discuss what, obviously, all of the requirements, but not just about what the house is like. Are you looking for garden space? And a lot of people will say, oh, garden's a must. But others will say, actually, no, garden's not for me. I'm no gardener. I'm not really fussed if it's got one or not. If it's just
that's when you say, I'll not tell you about the 1,500 square meters that comes with it then.
Exactly, but it's true. Some people just want a wee courtyard, Jim, somewhere they can just put a seat and a table and sit outside. They don't want to be having all the fuss because their lifestyle just might not warrant it. They don't have the time or the energy or the desire to do it. Everyone's got a different idea.
For me, Main Street in Upper Largo, that's the perfect one for that. It's got the two parking bays. You very rarely get any parking up in Upper Largo anyway. And you've got two parking bays with the property, and you've got a wee courtyard garden at the back, which is actually quite private, and it's straight off your lounge. So it's ideal for somebody that just doesn't want to do the garden. And then effectively, when people say, I really do want a garden, I say, well, just toodle off down the Serpentine onto the beach and you've got a garden that's looked after by someone else.
Yeah.
True. But you had the same experience as well, though, Jimmy, the other day, 16 Kinloch in Ladybank.
Yeah.
The wee courtyard bit at the back, the lady there was like, that's not a problem for me, that's perfect, that's what I've had before, it's not an issue for me. You know, so everyone has a different thing. Just because maybe my view is I like a garden, that's not what everyone's looking for.
So it is about playing to your needs now. Okay, let's wrap up. Final words on this, Jimmy. What would be the one thing that we've discussed today that you'd tell people to, or advise people to do?
I would say if they're on the market, what we finish with is the best thing that you can ask your agent about who's coming and why they come in. So
good point.
Come in, age, why they come in. So what's attracting to them house? If it is the garden, make sure that you're getting the garden looking tip top for that. If it's going off subject, but if it's something else in the house that's making them come for it, making sure that's looking tip top. So scheduling and planning your viewing around why the buyer is coming to view your property.
Excellent. Good advice. Perry, what about yourself?
I think for me, it's curb appeal, and it's about understanding what the people that are coming to look at your property are looking for in regards to that curb appeal. But you can do that minimalistically. It doesn't need to be expensive. Just make it look nice. Take the time out to do it, but find quick and easy, tricky ways to do it rather than something that's taken a lot of your investment. Because actually, if it's something that takes up a lot of your time, chances are you're not going to pay attention to it every day, and actually that will harm the garden. So it's all these little tips that we've shared today, plus whatever else the person coming to see the house is looking for. Just be as organised and structured as you can and take advantage of the weather as we've got it.
Absolutely. My final words on this would probably be if the garden is something somebody really wants when they're coming along to see your property and it's a big thing to them, then make sure the garden is the wow factor of the place. What I would say though is if it is sunny outside and it is nice and quiet, so make sure traffic in that is not a thing, because if you go outside, you're standing in the garden and they're zoom, 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 zoom. Well, you're trying to tell them at the end, it's like negotiate a deal with them, and then everything like that's happening in the background and they can't hear you as a result of it, then it tells them straight away that the garden is not the place for them. So make sure you understand that. Also, don't take them out there last if it's pouring and rain. You'll have to bring them into another potential room, which is the next wow factor in your house, to discuss anything at the end with them about final words or final thoughts on what they want or what they would be prepared to offer for your property. That's really the best advice I can give someone. So use the garden to the most advantage as possible. You've been getting a lot of top tips for here. And if you want any more information, please feel free to contact us. You can message us direct, no bother, but there is a contact details on this post itself. You can read this over again in the post here, because there's a link on here to the show will go on there, and the podcast will go up as well, so you can listen to it while you're in your car, or you can just read the article. It's a 4-minute article to read through to get more information about what we just discussed today. But all we are doing is putting our own perspective and information and our ideas towards this as well, to give you a bit more factual information. And that's it, guys, from us today. Thank you very much for listening in and watching the Fife Property Show, and bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.